Welcome everybody to Grand Rounds. My name's Tom Fodden and I'm Chair of Grand Rounds for today. And I'm particularly pleased to be here today to chair this session, which is the launch of the ARCHIE Mountain Challenge book. And you'll hopefully tell by my glamorous attire today that I took part in the ARCHIE Mountain Challenge. And I am in the book, and here is the book. I have here in my hand the book. And I can see in the audience various members of the team who wrote bits for the book, so it's great to see you all here. But before I introduce Paul Fetters, we have the usual set of parish notices. The European Association for the Study of Diabetes gave the 2017 Minkowski Prize to Professor Pearson at their annual meeting in Lisbon. The prize recognises research contributing to the advancement of knowledge concerning diabetes. And Professor Ewan Pearson, pictured here slowly falling over, focuses his research on the role of precision medicine and what it can play in treating diabetes. He goes on to say, around 200 million people are prescribed the treatment metformin, which has been used for over 60 years, yet we still do not know how it works. So that's precision for you. Plenty to go out for Ewan and for his research. Where were you on the 19th of September 2013? That's when Grand Rounds began, an auspicious day, and it began with Professor Colin Palmer speaking on the potential projects to be carried out with GoShare, which I'm sure you're all signed up with. And last month, Dr. Moniza Siddiqui, pictured here with Colin, in what I can only assume is a lab environment, is the first author on a study showing a genetic link between statin use and myalgia. And here's the science. We know that the immune system is involved in repair and regeneration of muscles, and that our gene, LILRB5, snappy, is involved in the immune system and may control the expression of key factor FOXP3 that enables the mechanism by which the immune system repairs muscle cells. That ends the science. The Clinical Trials Unit here in Tayside, a joint initiative between Dundee University and NHS Tayside, has been recognised for the gold standard of its clinical research. It's retained full registration status in the UK, clinical research collaboration, the national body overseeing the trials unit in this country. And here is consultant endocrinologist Chris Schofield, taking a well-deserved rest in a hospital gown, experiencing some of this gold standard research. Is Chris here today? No, he's probably busy doing some research in a gown. And next week, not to be missed, Sarah Alfstaff's return to Grand Rounds. Always entertaining and informative. Sarah will probably be telling me why the Seahawks are nailed on for a return for the Super Bowl 52. But also, she'll tell us about the huge amount of work that's gone into formalising the HIV pre-exposure prophylaxis guidance. She's always very entertaining, always got a funny story to tell, so please come along and bring a friend. But this week, I'm very pleased to introduce Paul Fetters, consultant anaesthetist, Ironman, adventurer, chief organiser of the ARCHIE Mountain Challenge, and now author and editor of the new ARCHIE Mountain Challenge book, available for purchase at the back of this very auditorium today. He is going to tell us about how a daft idea turned into a bonkers and wonderful adventure, and why this cuddly toy here has anything to do with anything. So, Paul, on you come. Whilst I sort this out. Spontaneous round of applause for Paul.
Thanks very much, Tom. There are some videos included in this, and there will be a wee bit of you should never work with children and animals, and now you should never work with videos and PowerPoint, so there'll probably be some sort of a wee bit of glitch as far as that goes. I'm here to tell you about the Archies, the 1,000-metre mountains of Scotland, and this wonderful list. And I'm also here to tell you about the ARCHIE Mountain Challenge that happened in June of 2015. But I'm predominantly here to tell you about the Archie's book, which is launched today, and why, after this, you should go out and buy it for yourselves and for all of your friends and relatives for Christmas presents. The talk will feature mild-mannered respiratory consultant who, during the challenge, morphs into superhero Hong Tom Fui, or Super Tom for those of you that are too young to get that reference. But first of all, I want to mention this guy, Mark Beaumont, who, in a feat of spectacular but completely accidental engineering, smashed the world record earlier this week, and I'm sure most of you are aware of that. It's a tremendous performance, cycling around the world in under 80 days. It's just incredible. It's mind-blowing. It was 240 miles a day. It's just quite incredible. Here's him looking slightly less sleep-deprived, and Mark has been very supportive of this challenge from the outset, which has been really great, and he's written the foreword for it. And I'd just like at this point to come out of the talk and show you a little video of his, if I can manage. So that's on Google. Tom? Yeah, it's not on Google. It's on the box.
I know my place. IT support.
Yeah, here we go.
Have you got it? Oh, no, I don't need my place. That one?
Yep.
It's very quiet.
Doesn't matter. So basically what he's saying is he's sorry he can't be here today. He's just recovering from his round the world challenge. This is him cycling along the banks of the Tay. He thinks it was a wonderful challenge and a really great charity to support. He's now become a patron of the ARCHIE Foundation, and he supports the book fully and would like you to buy it. Now, if I come out of that, I'll just let that play in the background. Okay. I'd also like to tell you about... Oh, okay. This lady is my lovely wife, Heidi. She's also an endurance athlete. She's not a bad triathlete, she's quite a good swimmer, but her main form of endurance is putting up with being married to me. So on our wedding anniversary in June of 27th, 2014, I do remember my wedding anniversary, although occasionally I have forgotten, we went on a no expenses spared celebratory trip wild camping on the west coast of Scotland. And we walked up Ben Starav, which is this fine mountain here. This is actually the shoulder of it, and it's off to the right. While we were walking up it, I should have probably been reflecting on how great it is to be married to such a wonderful person, but instead I was obsessing with the idea of a new challenge. The ARCHIE Foundation was due to be launched in Tayside, and we were discussing in our department having some sort of sporting challenge that we could have as a sponsored event to help publicise the ARCHIE Foundation and also raise some money for the charity. We had discussed a Land's End to John O'Groats ride, which is an impressive thing to do, but I just thought it's not original. People have done it before, and I wanted something with a real bit of pizzazz and something really spectacular. And while we walked up Ben Starav, which is over 1,000 metres, I came back to the thought that I've been having for years, that why are we still thinking about mountains and feet in Scotland? Why are we thinking about them in rows when all on the maps it's all in metric, it's all in metres on the maps? And by the end of the walk, I had it fully worked out. I had the whole idea, just like J.K. Rowling with her 7 books, I had the whole idea mapped out in my head that we would do a human-powered relay over over the 1,000-metre mountains of Scotland. I didn't at that point actually know how many there were. And we would do it on foot, we'd cycle in between them, kayak in between where necessary, and we'd do that from sea level. And so poor Heidi got the brunt of me boring her stupid with that. So there were lots of emails sent from that June, and I tried to gather some people together. And this was the first planning meeting, which was in September of 2014. And I won't bore you with the details, but something like this has a huge amount of logistics and planning. One of the things at that meeting that I could show people was the baton that we would use. I think any self-respecting relay has a baton. We thought the Olympic torch might be a bit heavy to cart up mountains, and if it didn't set people on fire, then it was likely to get blown out at some point. So I was really delighted with Kevin, who's over here, one of the ARCHIE staff, to discover that ARCHIE had a rabbit. So this is Rabbi, ARCHIE's rabbit, and Rabbi became our mascot and the baton for the relay. And we put a little James Bond tracker-style device on the back so that our every move could be tracked online. And that became a real feature of the challenge. So on the 30th of May of 2015, we started up near Dingwall on the Cromarty Firth. So that's the North Sea on the east coast of Scotland, at the north end of the challenge. The quick handshake, a toe dip, and then off we set, serenaded by Alison Geddes, paediatric nurse now retired, on the bagpipes. And you can see Vicky Alexander there on the back of the tandem. She's one of the paediatricians. So what I'd like to do now is to link to my second video, which is to show you, now this is where I might struggle. I know, here we go. This is the adventure show footage, and I'm hoping that the sound will be better on this.
Right now, we're going east to Dingwall for something new and equally testing. ARCHIE's Mountain Challenge is a relay event, and it sounds deceptively simple. Running up Scotland's metric roads. That's 130 mountains over 1,000 metres. But that's not quite the whole picture. To qualify, they must have a drop of 100 metres on all sides. And just to really confuse everyone, 3 mountains that aren't technically Munros fall within this definition. There's just one more thing. To make it more of a challenge, the team are linking them by bike or kayak.
It's absolutely unique. We've never been done before, so yeah, it's a great adventure. It's very complex, but I think the attraction is just to get involved in something huge. Like everyone again, it's a one-off.
It's a huge challenge, 130 mountains. If it all comes together smoothly, it'll be fantastic.
The challenge is the brainchild of Paul Fettis, an anaesthetist at 9 Miles Hospital in Dundee. He wants to encourage more people into our hills and raise awareness of the plight of local sick children.
It's quite exciting, really. It's everything that I envisaged, which is really particularly exciting, and it's underway.
It starts with a symbolic dip of the toe in the North Sea, and that includes young Rabbi, who's multitasking. He's both the challenge mascot and a GPS tracker. Rabbi's a sociable creature, which is just as well as he'll be passed from person to person. With over 50 folk involved, the logistics have been extremely complicated.
The intention is to complete the challenge within sort of two to 3 weeks. The total distance is about 1,400 kilometres, and the total height climbed is nearly 88,000 metres, which is pretty much the equivalent of 10 Everests if we started at sea level. To make it fit in that time, we plan to run as much of the daytime as possible into the night if the route suits and the time suits. The handovers are going to be quite remote in some cases, so actually the planning logistics, getting the runners there to receive our baton and move onwards is quite tricky, and that takes a lot of effort and planning.
After 40 kilometres on the road, the riders arrive at the foot of Ben Rivers to hand over Rabbi for the run up the first mountain.
Is this the rabbit?
Yeah. But this challenge isn't just for hardened athletes. On 2 of the 130 hills, we'll be joined by a group of walkers who are equally committed but also have youngsters in tow.
This is just an absolutely phenomenal challenge because I think there are 2 elements to it. There's the actual cycling and the running itself. It's also the organisational thing. I mean, having to set up a challenge to try and get 40 folk up Ben Rivers, 40 folk up Shahali, then also to cycle between all those hills and not all the 4,000 feet hills in Scotland. It's absolutely massive. And I think when these guys get that done, and I've got every faith that they will, then I think they'll deserve the point.
It has been quite a lot of work. When Paul originally said, can you plan the route? Then I can easily plan a route in an evening or two. But the time and effort that has to go to ensuring that a pair of runners at the right time on the right day, it has taken all the time.
The organisers probably couldn't have chosen a worse summer. This is the start of June. It is wet, very windy, and the summit, Ben Withers, still has snow cover.
That was hard. We were last minute replacements, was asked to do it on Thursday. Somebody called off sick. So yes, so me and Leah stepped in.
Well done, Kirsty. Right, run. Have a good run.
It's actually quite nice. Pretty blowy on the top, quite a lot of snow. But better than anticipated. I've never run a Monroe before. That's my first Monroe that I've done. But that's enjoyable. We'll do that again. That's lovely.
As soon as the runners are down from Ben Withers, the bikers are off again, heading for Ben Jerrick. And the next set of runners. It's not just the logistics of the challenge that has taken a lot of organising. The support is also vital to success.
So this is the camper van, donated by Paul's auntie. So this follows everybody around on the various legs, and it's all at the bottom of each hill, so that when you come off you know you've got warmth and sustenance.
While Barry and his son Rory take a well-earned break, runners Jason Hardy and Simon Crawley are having a tough time on the hill.
It's pretty boggy, pretty wet. A lot of it we're running through peat bogs and things, so it's pretty difficult to pass through there. And then just going on the summit just to make it extra special for us.
But in spite of the wintry conditions, they've completed Ben Jerrick on schedule.
Last 2 meters was knee-deep snow around the kick steps. It's 1st of June. It just seems bonkers. So I'm glad to be back down with some food. Okay, well done.
2 down, 128 to go. And mascot Ravi's still on the move. We'll be back later in the programme to see how the relay team gets on.
Okay, I don't know if you noticed there, but there were a couple of references to feet. And now I go bottom right, is that right? Just that one. Cool. And people were talking about Monroe's. So why have this new list? What's this all about? So this is Hugh Monroe, who was from Kirriemuir and was best known really for creating the Monroe list. He was also a founder member of the Scottish Mountaineering Club, the SMC. But his list was, he listed 277 mountains over 3,000 feet, which at the time was astonishing for people because people thought there were about 30. This list has oscillated over time. It went up to 284 and it currently stands at 282. That's partly due to resurveying and it's partly due to a change in opinion of what constitutes a Monroe. So he did that list, he created that list or published that list in 1891. So it's mountains over 3,000 feet and there's 282 of them. They've done a huge amount of good. This list has done a huge amount of good for the Scottish outdoors and the appreciation of hill walking, and people go out and they bag these and they talk about going up a Monroe and Monroe bagging, and that I'm certainly not trying to take away from that. I think that's been a really good thing for hill walking in Scotland. But on the back of the book I've put this rather contentious statement: if Monroe were alive today, he wouldn't come up with the Monroes, he would come up with the Archies. So how can I justify that? Well, there's about 260 OS maps covering the standard OS map size 1 to 50,000 covering the UK, and there's no feet on any of them. Metrification started actually, the boxes here, the kilometre boxes started in the early part of the 20th century, and metrification of the contours started in the 60s and was finished in the 80s. So for several decades there have been no feet on the map. Feet are irrelevant to modern mapping. This is a close-up of one of those maps. This is Anchelic, which is the most northerly set of Archies, and it's a really fabulous mountain. There are 2 Archies here, 2 mountains over 1,000 metres, and they're both also Munros, and there's no other Munros on the mountain. Which is, you might go, hang on a minute, wait a minute. So a Munro is 3,000 feet, which is 914.4 metres. So why aren't these other tops here? Why don't they count as Munros? Well, that would probably be obvious if you were walking up the mountain. Anyone that's ever gone hill walking will be accustomed to that feeling of, nearly at the top, nearly at the top. Oh no, that was only a shoulder of the mountain. And you may come down a little bit and then go up. But it's obvious to most people that a shoulder is merely a shoulder, it's not a separate mountain. But when does a shoulder become a separate mountain? Well, that's a good question. And what I found when I researched this, amazingly, for the Munros, is there are no clear criteria for that. I was astounded by that, but that is the case. There are no criteria for separating them. And that's not surprising if you think about it. In 1891, it was amazing that the heights were surveyed so closely, and to try and get any estimate of height drop on all sides would have been just impossible for the surveying techniques at the time. So if we take the Munros versus the Archies, so 1891, 19th century versus 21st century, the Munros are 914.4 metres, as I'd mentioned. There's 282 of them. There's no clear criteria, and basically the separation of those mountains comes down to opinion. If we compare that with the Archies, 1,000 metres, a vertical kilometre, it's quite a nice rounded number that people can get their head round. There's 130 of them, and there's a 100-metre drop on all sides of these mountains. That's known as prominence. So there's basically 100 metres drop, 100-metre prominence. So does that mean it's a knockout fight and Hugh Munro would not have a leg to stand on? Well, I don't think it's like that. The Munros are not going away. It's a wonderful list, and it's part of our culture and our heritage, and it should be fully embraced. But I think it's time for a 21st century list and a metric list. I also wonder if Hugh Munro might turn in his grave, but interestingly, I was putting Munro into my smartphone the other day, and it auto-corrected to my pal. So I'm kind of taking that as a message that hopefully he'd approve of this. So that's the Archie Mountains, 130 of them in mainland Scotland. There's none on the islands, there's none in the far north. We started, as it showed in the video there, on the Cromarty Firth by Dingwall, with Ben Wyvis as our first mountain, and we finished by Ben Eam in ARCHIE, and that's in the Atlantic Ocean on the west side. So we crossed Scotland and we started at one sea and we ended at an ocean. That's the route that was shown by our tracker. So that was the James Bond style tracker on the back of Rabbie here. And part of the reason that we took that route, there were lots of reasons for choosing different routes and things, but one of the reasons was it meant that we could finish at the Rest and Be Thankful, which is just the best place in the world to finish a challenge like this. So it was slightly engineered to do that. The community walks, you saw part of the first one there up Ben Wyvis. I had this vision of it being beautiful summer weather, and it would just get some new people into hill walking, and it would really inspire them to a lifetime of enjoying the outdoors. And hopefully it has, but certainly the weather didn't. There were 3 community walks, Ben Wyvis on the first weekend, the second weekend up Loch Nagar, another fine mountain. The weather was so atrocious that weekend that they couldn't even get to the top. And I know how atrocious it was because I spent part of it on a ridge in Inner Knoydart with Jason, who's up the back here. And the third weekend was on Schiehallion, and These were great things for extending the challenge to other people. As a way of extending this to other people, I'd like you to consider a bucket list. I wouldn't recommend writing a book. That's far too much work. But I would recommend, there's a map in the book. There's a free map with it that HarperCollins have very kindly done at no cost for us, which lists all the mountains. And I think as a bucket list, trying to bag all the Archies is considerably easier than bagging all the Munros. And it might be something that you might want to consider ticking off. Okay. Second bit of video. We'll find out how we're getting on. So I'm not going to tell you about the actual challenge itself. You can just see it.
Now we rejoin the runners, bikers and kayakers who've been documenting their progress in Archie's Mountain Challenge. They're attempting to set a record for ascending Scotland's 130 peaks over 1,000 metres in one continuous relay, and they're enjoying every minute.
And having lots of fun climbing hills in a completely different way. We're covering the ground very quickly. 6 arches in a day would be very hard work to do if you were by yourself. You do it in small teams, and you can make really fast progress.
The teams are now a third of the way through their challenge, with 46 summits successfully in the bag. Months of meticulous planning is paying off.
We've got about a 22-mile run through these mountains, finishing at the top of Cairngorm, and we're going to hand on the GPS tracker to the next group who are going to do the Eastern Cairngorms, and then we're going to meet the next lot in Lochnagar. We've got another about 70 Archies to do, but hopefully we'll bag about 5 or 6 today. Right, Ed? Good effort. How was it?
We made really good progress until we sent you a text to say that we were making really good progress. Right, just wrap you then.
Cheers. Good night, guys. Thanks a lot. Have a nice one. Now, my responsibility. Touch them on.
Yeah, nice and safe. Get the top of the bag so you can see the sky.
I don't know because it's like being 8 years old again. You run downhill without caring the run. It increases the intensity of the mountain experience because you're pushing hard, you're running hard, and you're concentrating, and then suddenly you look up and you're in this spectacular environment. And doing a big long challenge, if you were to do that as a very small group of individuals, you'd have to take months off. Well, this way we can drop in, drop out, and be part of it, and it's fantastic.
I only used to Scotland about 10 years ago and I had small children and never got that much into the Highlands. So this is a great opportunity for me to come and experience the mountains. I got to meet new people. It's a safe way for me to enjoy fantastic countryside. I think it's kind of reinvigorated my passion for going out in the hills again. And actually travelling light with less kit, running shoes, setting off early. You can totally be up a couple of hills and back down early in the morning or even late evening on the hills. So I think that's something that's really kind of reinvigorated my enjoyment of being out in the hills. Yeah. Just. Well done. Let's take the photo to prove it.
Archie selfie. Great, Archie selfie. Also, every single one. Okay, ready?
Let's go.
The team are calling these peaks Archies. One more down, 69 still to go. Over the coming hours and days, the mascot Rabbit keeps on the move. It's a punishing schedule, but everything's going to plan.
The real hard part is the relentlessness of it, the fact that we're basically running or moving about 20 hours a day, so the tracker's only still for 3 or 4 hours in the day. So, it's long days, and that obviously it wears you down, obviously. So, pretty tired.
So most days there's maybe 6 or 8 people available, but it's obviously a challenge that's going on over a number of weeks. So, some days there might be more people available at weekends, and then during the week maybe less people available to help out. But it's a big team, but on any individual day, you're probably only using maybe 6 to 8 people for doing different legs.
This is me on a tourniquet climbing down Morris Range. I think only about 6 to go until the episode finished.
It's really amazing how strong the team energy and vibe is. And I think the thing is, once you get involved there, although you probably have to go back to work and things, you're really looking for when you can next get back involved, because it's that absorbing and you really want to be part of it once you're in it.
After just over 2 weeks, nearly 1,500 kilometres and 130 mountains to climb, it's almost over.
So, here we are on the top of Denmark, the Penland. It's Sunday the 14th of June, and here's Danny having a well-earned rest on the summit. Just on 9 o'clock in the morning, Danny's third ARCHIE day. Here comes K-Side GP, Graham Gatherer, just summiting his 10th ARCHIE on the expedition.
It's been a monumental effort, and as Rabi heads towards the final summit, there's no shortage of well-wishers. Then it's one final push before the finish at Loch Fyne. And just for the record, the final time was 15 days, 9 hours and 6 minutes. And to stay in touch with this and all the latest Adventure Show news, follow us on Facebook.
So it was really great that the Adventure Show could film it, and I think they portrayed the challenge very well. I'm sorry the volume was a bit low there. The only real error there was that there were 2 slides of a whole pile of mountain bikers on beaches that were absolutely nothing to do with the challenge. But I can show you what happened at the end. Also, it amused me. I hope many of you here were involved in it, and I hope you enjoyed seeing yourself on TV. It amused me that I think people run faster when they're being filmed. So this is us at the Rest and Be Thankful before a sort of celebratory Tour de France style sipping champagne, cycling down to the side of the loch. That was my vision, and it pretty nearly happened, except I hadn't envisaged the great sea of cow poo that would be on the quiet road down the pass. Toe dip in the Atlantic Ocean, and then a nice family affair with a bunch of us going for tea and sandwiches at the ARCHIE Inn, which is a very fine establishment. So, what about the book then that I want you all to buy, and why? Well, this probably is a good way of summing up what it's like writing a book. There's many evenings I spent in last autumn mainly, where I spent most of the autumn chronically tired, and that was because I'd be working away on the book and I'd suddenly realise it was 2 a.m, and I'd go to bed and be unable to sleep because my head was buzzing so much with it all. But I didn't write the book on my own. It like the challenge, was a team effort, and all of these people, and many of them again are here today, have contributed to this. So there are 29 people that have individually told their story of the legs. So every leg of the challenge is described, and it's described by the people that were there. So there's lots of personal stories. I've got a personal story as well, in that while training for the challenge in March of 2015, I came off my bike and was found unconscious and basically suffered what would be termed a minor head injury, but it was a pretty unpleasant experience, and I took quite a while to recover for that, and I don't think I was fully recovered by the time of the challenge, as you could probably tell from the way I was speaking in the video. So I described that. I'll just touch on that there. I won't say anything more about it. But the book, as well as having personal stories, is littered with wonderful views of the Scottish outdoors, original photos taken on the challenge. That's Anchellach, that's Russell Duncan. This is the Black Mount by by Ranach Moore, and that's Kintail. Lots of wonderful photos, and it charts Rabi's process through snow and storms, watery lows, and some fabulous mountain highs. And as I say, that's been told by the people that carried Rabi. Now, it's all very well having an interesting text and some nice photos, but I really wanted this to be a really professional, top-end product. And to do that, I employed a graphic designer. So this is Gregor McNeish, who's Cameron McNeish, who's a sort of outdoor writer and adventure show presenter, if you've heard of him. This is his son. He's a graphic designer, and he did the work he was a magician, turning my ideas and the photos and the text into what I think is a really wonderful book, and I'm really delighted with it. So that's the book. I'd like you all to go and buy it. Creating a book like this is an expensive process, I'm really delighted to say that due to sponsorship by Medical and Dental, and also an anonymous donation from one of the ARCHIE Tayside fundraising committee, all of the costs of printing 3,000 copies of this book have been covered. So that means, I'll repeat that, all of the costs of printing 3,000 copies of this book have been covered. So if you buy the book from ARCHIE, all of the money goes to ARCHIE, which is a really wonderful thing to be able to see. Bookshops may take a cut. Nicholson's don't. So a little bit about ARCHIE. Well, looking after patients is obviously a personal thing, and it's the human touch that really makes things special. These are all staff in paediatrics at the moment. That's Donald Campbell, orthopaedic surgeon. But it's also about bricks and mortar, and you need facilities to be able to do it properly. And the fundraising effort is to create a new twin theatre children's suite, which I'm hopefully going to be able to show you now. Show you a little video if you haven't seen this already. This is 2 minutes for a world-class facility.
New twin operating theatre surgical suite for Tayside Children's Hospital. Once completed, all our planned paediatric surgical procedures, including dental, will happen in these fantastic new facilities.
On arrival through a brand new entrance, with all on the same level as the rest of the hospital, there is a warm welcome for children and parents. Play areas and activities for babies to teens, and a quiet room for Archie's class.
When it's time for children to go into the operating theatre, we have an opportunity for young drivers to drive the room where they're able to walk and be carried. We try and make it as fun an experience as possible, going to the theatre with their parents and others. So the anaesthetic room has lots of distractions for children. And once they're asleep, the parents are looked after in the parent room, they can have a cup of tea and have an update on their child's progress during sleep.
The new operating theatres will be a brilliant working environment, with plenty of room and the latest equipment. But best of all, there will be two. And so this means our operating capacity will be doubled, so all our dental operations will take place here too.
When we return from the theatre, the children will recover in a calm and comforting ward, all within sight of caring clinical staff. Once they're ready to be up and about, there are indoor and outdoor play areas to keep them occupied until they are ready to go home, having experienced firsthand the wonderful difference the children's surgical care created through NHS Tayside and the ARCHIE Foundation, working together for the children of Tayside.
So that's what it's all for. That was my dad. That's for tonight. So the book is available from the anaesthetic office here, from the ARCHIE office when it's open, and it's available in Dundee at Waterstones and also at Nicholson's, and hopefully it's going to be available across Scotland, but it's also available to buy online at archie.org as of now. It contains the map that I mentioned before. And I'd also like to mention that we have some really wonderful T-shirts which have the map on the back at the back, and they're on sale. So there's a deal where you can buy that at a reduced price when you buy a book. And that's all I'd like to say. But if you have any questions, then I'd be very happy to answer any.
Now, Paul is about the most humble person I've ever met, and he continues to be so, because he's not told you, about half the story here. We didn't just do this for larks. Obviously, we did this. We did some of the larks, as we said. But we did this to raise money, and after the event, we had a gala dinner. And there were blind auctions and all sorts of things that happened. And so for the sum total that we raised for the Archie Foundation was
£33,000.
£33,000. And that's £33,000 because he was too busy on his wedding anniversary thinking about mountains over 1,000 metres, and the generosity of time from a lot of people who sat at the back here, and all the other people you saw on that video. But not only that, but the people who sat at home looking after the children, the people here who were covering the shifts at work, and the people who shuttled people around to be able to make this happen. So Paul masterminded this thing. It's an amazing thing, an absolutely astonishing thing that raised an awful lot of money. He's put a lot of it into the book, and we hope to raise some more. Now, does anyone from Archie want to say anything? I'm looking towards the Archie people. They don't have to, just an opportunity. Do you want a microphone? Hang on.
Just while Tom's giving that, just to say that if you contributed, you're acknowledged in the book, so you can buy it and find out how.
Thank you. My name's David Cunningham, and I'm the Chief Executive of Archie. When I first heard about this idea, I honestly didn't think it was possible, and I was increasingly stunned by what you achieved. My abiding memory is sitting at home one night watching the tracker, knowing how heavy the snow was, and a particular storm had hit and the tracker was still far too high up the hill to be remotely safe. And then phoning colleagues who were also watching, and we all just sat and watched to make sure you got home safely. It was the most incredible achievement. You've raised a huge amount and stand to raise a huge amount more. So thank you so very much. I've already bought my copy. I will be buying more for gifts. I hope everybody else does too. Thank you so much for organising. Thank you all so much for taking part. Huge, huge achievement. Well done.
Does anyone have any comments or questions? Then we'll perhaps wrap up. Books and T-shirts available outside. Next week, Sarah Ulstaff with her chat about HIV pre-exposure prophylaxis. Thanks so much for coming. See you next week.